podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome along to Mutchy and Denno. Back with you after a couple of weeks break over Easter. Robbie Dennison and Andy Mutch, how are you both?
All good, Johnny? Brilliant, thank you.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I'm very good, thanks. I can't complain. Had a nice week away, and then the football season's back in full flow. So it's been very entertaining so far. And well, apart from Wolves, but let's not talk about that. It's been entertaining elsewhere. Watching a bit of Premier League over the weekend. You did go to Wolves, though, didn't you, Mutchy?
Yeah, I went to Leeds on Saturday. Yeah, pretty disappointing, really. I was invited by my son, as it happens, who does a bit of business. He's a fellow who has a box there, so. Had a great day, met a few Wolves fans. I saw Claire actually after the game in Leeds town centre when I was going back to get the train. But it was a tough day for them. Leeds were really up for it because obviously they've still got an opportunity to stay in the league. So they played particularly well. Ourselves, not a good day.
No, that's probably an understatement as well. I mean, Denno, It was great chatting about Wolves before the Easter break, and then we've come back and it's been a 4-0 defeat and a 3-0 defeat.
Well, I think they're at the point now, Johnny, where they just want the season to finish. And I think fans might feel the same way a little bit as well, because the writing's been on the wall since before Christmas time, really, with the wins that they've had. And it looked as if performances were improving for a period of time, probably a month before they had a break for 3 weeks, and looked as if they were going to finish the season reasonably well. But the last two results, 4-0 West Ham and then 3-0 Leeds as well. And I must admit, I was impressed with Leeds with regards to whenever they played Man United as well, away the other day as well. They looked strong and physical and a half-decent side. So that result didn't really, what's the word?
Well, it didn't surprise
me. Yeah, it didn't surprise me, but it's just one of those nights, Johnny, where I think even the manager looks at it now and he just wants to get things settled down now, the season to finish. They know where they are now anyway. So it's just he probably wants to get his hands on producing a side that's going to be capable of picking up wins next season and getting a half-decent start to the season next year. So you do want to finish in a high. You want to finish with a bit of momentum going into next season. And the last couple of results has just been a little bit very disappointing, actually, with regards to being able to achieve that.
Yeah, I think the point you make there, I don't know about the manager wanting the season to end now, and the fans certainly do as well. I think it's a real problem now for Rob Edwards. I don't know what you think on this, Mutchy, but the season is for now, it's quite clear, it's maybe 6 weeks too long for him, because I think after the last two results, there's quite a large proportion of the fan base are not happy with what's going on and are not happy with the performances that have been turned out, and that reflects on the head coach. Now we know that most of the problems at Wolves don't come from him, and he was very much brought here with one eye on the Championship. But do you think there's a very real danger that if things start to spiral in the next few weeks and Wolves start turning in more of the performances like the one you saw at Leeds, that Rob's going to be under a lot of pressure to even get as far as the summer?
Well, it's a tough period for the manager because every Wolves fan or any football supporter, they're only interested in people putting the shirt on, trying the best and trying to win games of football. So even though we're down, they still want to see him try. They still want to see him win games. Rob's got to motivate the players, but what he's got to do is keep his own credibility as a manager, where he's keeping the wheels moving, getting a performance out of the players. And unfortunately, as we touched on in the last few games, it's looked a proper relegated side. I'm not saying they're throwing the towel in, but the commitment from Leeds compared to ourselves on Saturday was just chalk and cheese. Rob's now got to try and keep the momentum going, like Robbie said, because you want to finish on a high if you can, but it's going to be very, very difficult now. And the players know that they're down now, and they put a great fist in from February on, from November when he came in, and the performance away at Everton. There's quite a few performances which were very impressive, and I actually thought against West Ham for the first 25 minutes they were competing, but the minute there's adversity in this situation, they lose heart very quickly. He's a football manager, Rob Edwards, and he hasn't got a magic wand, and he's got to be motivating these players. But he'll be identifying the attitude of players and what they're about, for who he wants to keep and who he doesn't want to keep, of the ones that are happy to stay. Obviously, one or two will go, as we've touched on before. It's a tough gig for the manager over the next 4 or 5 weeks.
I don't think it is too strong a word to say throw in the towel in, because I think from the fans I've spoken to who went to Leeds, they felt Wolves threw the towel in on that day, and they're the ones paying their money to watch it. I think it's a really good point you make about that first 25 minutes or so at West Ham. Wolves were well on top, playing all the football, but then just folded like a pack of cards, particularly in that second half. Deno, the problem is he's got a team now. It's more. It's going to be more than one or two that go. I think it's just going to be more than one or two. I know we've said this before, but I think there's going to be a lot more than one or two go. And then he's got a rebuild on. So there are players he's picking week in, week out at the moment who aren't going to be here. They don't want to get injured. They're thinking about a future elsewhere. And in that sense, I think it's a real mess.
It definitely is. It is a real mess. It's been a mess for a long, long time now, most of the season, in fact. But you're right, because players will, they say they won't say that they're actually looking to get away at the end of the season. They won't say that. The agents and all will be working on that anyway. But I said earlier on, about maybe a couple of months ago, that I hope there's not going to be a lot leaving at the end of the season. I hope to keep a good numbers of the squad that they have now and take it into the next season. But I've changed my mind on that. It looks as if there's quite a few going to be moving on. He's got a real hard job to build a squad with regards come the summer. But I do hope that he's the one in charge to do it. I do think that the Tottenham game on Saturday is a massive game for them. With regards to where Tottenham are at the moment and the struggles that they have. Now, if they were to lose to Tottenham on the way they've lost the last couple of games without any fight, then I think the fans will have something to say Saturday, and that could be real detrimental to what happens maybe come the end of the season and come next season. But I do hope that Rob Edwards is in charge at the start of next season. I'm sure that he has put things in place already with regards to taking the club forward next year. So hopefully he'll get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, we'll probably talk a bit more at length nearer the time as well, and nearer the end of the season about next season's plans. We might even do. I think here's the game. What we should do is we should get the squad together and have a look, and in maybe the next podcast have a chat about each individual player, which one we think will be here next season, and and if we think they'll not be here and why. That might be worth doing, because I think we'll surprise ourselves, and we're going to be talking about a lot more outgoing.
Like, it might take more than one podcast.
I know. I mean, I'm just looking through the team on Saturday now and the substitutes, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
I do think Rob will be in charge next season, wherever happens from now to the end of the season. It's just a difficult situation he's in, where the players know they're down, their hearts are gone. As you said, some of them will keep themselves fit because they might be moving on, and agents will be doing everything they're doing. But the commitment from the club has to be to back Rob Edwards. But he's got a big job on in the respect of recruitment, who he lets go, what support he gets from the club itself, which was sort of really under question this season, wasn't it? From the transfer window in the summer right through to the mid-season. And ultimately, that's a worry that you think, are they going to back him as how he needs backing? Because all the Wolves fans expect is Wolves to bounce back next season. That's all they want. And ultimately, he's got to deliver that, but he's got to have good backing for that. But I have no doubt he'll be the manager for the start of next season. It's a fresh start for him then, and what happens from there onwards is the key.
Here's an interesting question then. The Championship will obviously be a lot stronger Championship with Tottenham Hotspur in it next season than them not in it. So would it be in Wolves' interests to lose to Tottenham Hotspur on Saturday to try and avoid a scenario where Tottenham are going down with them?
No, Johnny, no, don't go down that one at all, John.
I think it's a question.
Listen, Tottenham I think they finished 16th or 17th last year, didn't they?
Yeah.
And now they're down there again. So just because the name Tottenham donates a big club, it doesn't mean to say that they're going to be a force next year, even in the Championship, because what will happen to them? There'll be even more people jumping ship at Tottenham as well. They're like a Wolves. There'll be so many regarded as good players and big players at Tottenham who will be off down the road, Johnny. And that's what happens. The squad weakens. They won't maybe have had time to think about what's going to happen next season with regards to Wolves, who've actually had time to think about what's going to happen. So with regards to them being in the Championship, no, it doesn't make it stronger. And yes, Wolves do want to win the game on Saturday for their own sake, really.
Yeah. Of course they will. Of course they will. But what you got to remember, if Tottenham stayed up, West Ham are going down.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
Maybe.
Or Forest.
So you're still coming up with the same scenario where you're playing. Bearing in mind, when Wolves play Tottenham on Saturday, they're not playing the history of the club, where they've had superb players back in the day and the Oddles and the Archibalds and all that type of stuff and more. They're playing the 11 players that have put them in the position that they are at this moment in time. So Wolves have got just as much opportunity if they want to turn up and commit themselves properly. And they did do that for the best part for quite a period of time. But the last few performances, oh, dearie me, they've not been very good at all.
And I do think they do it to fans much as well on Saturday. Do it to fans because we've always said about the fans who travel away from home, and I'm sure it leads the way end was all sold out again, muchy, packed the rafters again. And those fans deserve performances from now to the end of the season. Now, you won't always get perfect performances, but at least you can have effort and playing for the shirt from now to the end of the season, and then see what happens with regards to your own personal, come the end of the season, where you're going to be, where you're not going to be. But surely you go out from now to the end of the season and put the effort in, if it is only for the fans, because the fans can change the atmosphere of the whole club, muchy.
Oh,
and Johnny,
absolutely.
you know that if they don't produce from now to the end of the season, and we're going into next season with the fans already on the back of the club and ready to jump on a couple of poor results at the start of next season, then all of a sudden the atmosphere changes and becomes a little bit toxic come the next season. And that's not being negative, it's just the way it is. So players need to show the fight that the fans deserve over the next 5 or 6 games.
Let's move on then to another big talking point from the weekend. The local paper led with a story, I think, over the weekend about a bust-up in the changing room between Tolu Arakadare and young Mutchy Mane. Now, it's a story that came to light maybe a few days earlier, but it only really broke over the weekend. Wolves have briefed that it's come from one party. It's come from Tolu Arakadare. He was, I think the term they briefed with, it was sole agitator or sole aggressor. I think that's what it was. So they're making it clear that it was Tolu's problem, and it's been a matter that's been dealt with internally. He's been fined quite significantly. To lay the context for this, something happened I was at the West Ham game. It was for the West Ham defeat when they lost 4-0 at the London Stadium a couple of weeks back, and something happened on the pitch when Mutchy Mane and Tolu came on, where Mutchy Mane did something that aggravated Tolu, possibly something he shouldn't have done in terms of just winding him up a little bit. They've come off the pitch, they've gone into the dressing room, and by all accounts, Tolu, who's a lot bigger than him and a lot older than him, has been quite physical. He's not laid him out, he's not sparked him, but he has been physical with him and has been, he's roughed him up a little bit. Everyone's moved on. Mane himself doesn't seem too concerned about it. He's quite a live wire fella, Mane. He's a big character. He's only 18, but he's got a little bit of spark to him, got a bit of confidence. He's a confident young man. He's good fun as well. He's a very bubbly character, and he's quite popular as well. But he's also not afraid to say a few things here and there. And that's where we're at. And obviously, people will say the club's being kicked while it's down. This sort of stories come out now. Would it have come out if Wolves had won 7 on the bounce and had pulled clear of relegation? I very much doubt it would. It's a very easy time for it to come out now while the ship is sinking and it looks like it's falling apart. From your perspective, lads, were there any dressing room bust-ups in your day?
Funny enough, when I first signed for Wolves, obviously Sammy Chapman was the manager. He's the guy who signed me. And he had his 2 sons at the club, Campbell and Calvin, I think his first name was. Anyway, Campbell played quite a lot. And he tried, he really tried, but it was a very difficult situation because his dad was the manager. And Pete Zellum, the 6th centre-half, we came back in the changing room at half-time one of the games, and he sort of has a bit of verbals with Campbell. Next minute, he absolutely cracks him, full pelt. And his dad's actually standing there watching that, and he's the manager. And I'm going, oh, here we go. It's all down to when you're not winning games of football and frustration, fellas with testosterone and all, whatever goes on, So if something's not happened in Wolves' changing room, I'm absolutely shocked. I'm not sure when you described that, Johnny, was it a footballing thing that they were arguing about, or were they being personal with each other? Because that's a different sort of thing, isn't it? Sometimes people's personalities can clash, or it's someone's done something on the football pitch that one of them doesn't think he's trying hard enough, so he says a few things. Do you know what that was?
Yeah,
I
don't know the exact situation. I remember it happening at the time because I was sat behind the Wolves dugout, and I remember them on the pitch. There was a little bit of a disagreement. I think Mane has probably, as the junior player, has probably either answered back or done something back to Tolu, which could be construed as a bit sort of out of place. And
Disrespectful, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think disrespectful and getting maybe getting a little bit too big for his boots. The reaction from Tolu was disproportionate in the changing room.
Right.
But
Right.
funny enough, I was in the tunnel area waiting to do some interviews afterwards, and Tolu came out. He came out on his own at first to go and do the warm down he needs to do because he hadn't played many minutes in the game. I don't remember seeing Mane come out. They have moved on, and there is a school of thought that while Tolu is difficult. He's a very difficult individual, and it's not the first time. There've been a few issues this season, and I think Wolves probably want rid of him. There is a school of thought of saying, well, young players maybe. I'm not saying by any stretch that Mane deserves a whack or anything like that, but there's a dressing room hierarchy. Would you say from your time, Denno, that there is a dressing room hierarchy when it comes to younger players and older, more senior players?
Yeah, there was. There definitely wasn't my time whenever I was growing up. Whenever I played even in the Irish League and all, when I was 16, 17, when the older boys said anything during the game or after the game, you listened to them. You might have come away from the game and thought they're talking rubbish or whatever, but you listened to them at that moment in time and respected their opinions because they had been through a little bit more than what you had been through. With regards to arguments, yeah, the verbal scenarios do crop up every now and again, Johnny, and things are said on the pitch to each other, but it should never become physical. For me, it should never become physical. But that tells you, and much he's mentioned it, about the frustrations that are going on at the club. Tolo hasn't really been getting the minutes recently either that he would like to be getting. And I actually thought he was doing quite well. He was always a goal threat whenever he did play. So I'm a little bit surprised that he's not getting the minutes, but maybe that tells you what's happening in some, you know what I mean. But it does surprise me that if he has got physical with Mane, it's a bit of a mismatch, really, isn't it? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That shouldn't really happen, and that shouldn't really come from a senior pro to a young lad like that. No matter what verbals have been said, unless it's got really personal, then it's a different scenario. But it shouldn't really get to that point. But yes, there was a players in the team you looked up to, and if they said something, you listened to them, Johnny, and that's the way it was in my time. Might have changed a little bit now, but that's the way it was in my time.
Well, absolutely, because it should be. And it gives me the impression it was on the verge of bullying this big fella having a go at the young lad. And he's not getting his place in the team. And it looks to me as if he's taking his frustrations out on Mane, who might be sort of a flamboyant character. And he doesn't like that fact. I think that's quite poor. And you don't need that. What you need is players in the changing room arguing with each other because you're frustrated that you're not winning and you care. And that's why arguments always came in the change room, but not that type of stuff in the main. I find it quite distasteful, really, that a big fella who has got far more experience than the young lad decides he wants to pick on him instead of someone else who may be able to stand up to him, if you know what I'm saying. That's the impression I get, but I'm not saying that's the absolute facts. But when you hear of bust-ups in changing rooms, you like to hear that because you know the players are going mad and they want to care. I remember when I was at Swindon and we played Southampton away early on, and we got beat 5-0, and we went back in the changing room, and the arguing that was going on between all the players because we were all frustrated. But Letizia was playing for them, and he scored 2 unbelievable goals like he did, and all that. But we had an assistant manager called David A, a Scottish fella who was very famous in Scotland, left back for Celtic. And he was a manager really, but he came as an assistant to John Gorman. And we never heard him say a word. And all the time I'd been there, and I'd been there about 6 weeks then, he never said a word in training, never spoke to anybody, he just stood there. And we used to think, is he a cardboard cutout him or what? Right. Anyway, but he was a nice fella. He was in the same hotel as me. Anyway, as we were all arguing, next minute David Ayres shouts at the top of his voice, he says, shut the effing up, the lot of you, like that. So the whole change room went quiet because we were all dead shocked that he'd said something. And his first words came out. It was so funny. He went, "We're going down anyway." And we were only. If you check the records, I'm not sure for a fact, but we were only about 6 weeks into the season, or you know what I mean. He says we're going down anyway.
There are
Johnny, could I just say, I think you mentioned it at the start with regards to when these things are brought up, and obviously you hear whenever things are going bad at a football club, you hear about all the bad things, don't you? You know, and that's the way it is. And this thing that's happened with Mane and Tolo, I think you probably wouldn't have heard about it if they had been sitting mid-table and safe in the season. Like whenever we were playing, and we had lost a couple of games, which didn't happen very often with us in the first 2 or 3 seasons with whenever we were starting off with Wolves. You might have heard someone had phoned up and said, "Oh, the lads are up drinking on Tuesday night because we'd lost on the Saturday," and all that sort of stuff. And that's the rumours that go around, and that's when the bad things with regards to the football side of things are brought up, and frustration for fans, frustration for players as well. And I think that's a little bit what you get whenever things aren't going well and haven't been going well all season.
Yeah, I think this is something that wouldn't have come out had it been different on the pitch. It brought to mind this.
Sorry, Johnny. Sorry to interrupt. But where did it actually come from then, Johnny? Did Wolves put that out in the press then,
No,
or was it someone who had mentioned that this had gone on? Somebody, a friend of a friend, if you know what I mean.
well, yeah, it's a story that's emerged from a source connected to the
Okay.
club. Modern day sources, they range from everywhere. They could
Mm.
be players themselves, they could be agents, they could be members of the backroom team. Although I know it didn't come from somewhere close to the first team squad. It could be staff. It could be former staff. There's so many different ways in which leaks emerge these days. It's
Okay.
really
Yeah.
hard for any professional club to keep a lid on things.
In truth, though, Johnny, I'd have to slightly disagree with you on the fact that it wouldn't have come out. It
Go on.
always comes out nowadays. It's like a village, right? And
Yeah.
especially with social media. I mean, back in our day, if something went on in Middlesbrough, right, a couple of hours later, everyone knows because someone knows someone who speaks to them on the phone, and they say, "Do you know what happened there the other day?" and blah blah. And them stories came out, whatever they were, quite regular, I suppose, because it's like a village, like the world's a village now, isn't it? With football, they're all over the world, and there's everyone can get in touch with each other. So it'll come out. It's much more disappointing that when you're down the bottom of the league and you're losing games all the time, the last thing you want is that type of behaviour, if that's one for a better word. It'll come out anyway, even if they're doing well. But the difference is it's more serious, right, when they're not doing well. If they're
Yeah.
doing well, they say, "Oh, they had a little thingy in there. Oh, yeah, yeah, just forget about that and crack on." You know what I mean? That's how it rolls. And
Yeah.
like Robbie said to me, when we played, in truth, we had good changing rooms. We got on. There wasn't any. The only fighting we had was with the teams we played against. You know what I mean? I remember we played West Brom at Molineux when we beat them on a Tuesday night. And I'm walking down the corridor going to the players' lounge, and Stacey North, the centre half's waiting for me at the door, and he goes to attack me, so I just cracked him. Walked in the players' lounge, had a drink, and then I said, "What was that all about?" He's just frustrated because you keep running rings round him. And that's what it was, honestly. You couldn't believe it.
Yeah, he just took it in the chin and got on with it, but much, you know what I mean? There was nothing more to it. You just move
Yeah.
on, and that's the way it was in those times. Like,
And I
Yeah.
actually think that the players themselves have moved on. I know Tolu hasn't got a future at the club now, which is a shame because I would have liked to have seen him in the Championship, but I think he's burnt too many bridges. I think Mane's moved on. Something in nothing to some degree. It's not ideal when a player of Tolu's size and seniority takes on, an 18-year-old. That's not ideal, and there are certainly issues there. But
Oh,
I think it's poor. I think it's fair, but I think it's moved on, and it's something that's not necessarily lingering in the squad at the moment. I don't think Mane is going to suffer too much from it. He might even think I may need to not watch my step, but may need to be a bit more careful as well with my own sort of reactions to things. It reminded me of two incidents actually. The first one was back in 2002. It was at the very first live game I did for Sky was away at Swansea. It was Swansea v Wolves in the League Cup, and they were making a real mess of it under Dave Jones, and they went 2-0 down, and they clawed it back and won 3-2. And Kenny Miller came off the bench and helped Wolves that day. And as we were walking off down towards the tunnel, the tunnel was really tiny. Do you remember it at the Vetch?
yeah.
Deno.
In,
It was
in between
really,
houses, wasn't it?
really
yeah,
tiny tunnel, barely fit one person. As we were walking down to do the post-match interview, which was by the away changing room down that tunnel, and before we got to the tunnel, Miller ran past Butler and said something to him, and ran past me. And there's just me and a floor manager walking down the tunnel. At the end of the tunnel is a cameraman and a sound man and an interview board. And as Miller runs past me, Butler starts absolutely legging it, raging, effing and jeffing, going mad. And then he is quickly followed by a couple of the squad who weren't actually playing. I think Jolyon Lescott was there. I don't think he was playing, but he was in his tracksuit. the dressing room door goes, Miller goes in, Butler follows him, and you hear what, to all intents and purposes, sounded like someone being filled in, and then a few more get in, and they're clearly kicking off a bit. You hear a bit more, and then that's it. The dressing room door slams, and then we interviewed Alex Ray as the player of the match, and I said to him, we held him back before he went in. I said, "Do you want to get in there and see what's going on?" And he said, "No, leave him to it." And then I remember Dave Jones coming out to do the interview, and he was shaking his head, and he just went, "It's like an effing playground in there." And that obviously didn't get out because the only people who saw it were just me and the floor manager and the cameraman, and we didn't actually see the fight. But it did make me think there's a junior player in Kenny Miller, a young Scottish player, and a senior one in Paul Butler, and he said something, and it's probably all kicked off. And there have been other ones. There was another one with a midfielder called David Davis at Wolves, and this one happened at the training ground when he had a very serious altercation with a couple of senior players for something that he did, and that did get elevated. And for a time, it looked as if David Davis's people were going to elevate this to some sort of complaint and some sort of disciplinary action. But funnily enough, after various people at the club looked at it, they backed down. David Davis himself backed down, didn't put a formal complaint in, and it all got brushed under the carpet. And I think the general consensus was that he realised he'd been out of order as a junior player, and had said something he shouldn't have done, or done something he shouldn't have done to senior players, and got his comeuppance to a degree. So things do happen from time to time and don't get out. But this one did make me think of, that junior senior player relationship.
And as I said before, Johnny, it's a respect. I think that's gone a little bit in the game now, hasn't it? Really, I think the younger lads don't like to say it all the time, but the money scenario might come into it as well. And all of a sudden, they're on decent money. They think they all of a sudden become a professional footballer when they played a handful of games, and that's not looking at money in any particular thing, but it's the young person who is should be a little more respectful towards the older generation and what they've achieved in the game. But as I said before, things should be said, and yes, they can be said, and you can give a bit back. But on the physical side of things, I don't think it should ever come to the physical side of things. Because at the end of the day, if you give somebody a good thumping, then they're not playing the following week, are they? So how are you going to explain that to the press? But I think the physical side should never really come into it. And you're always going to fall out. There's going to be different characters. There's going to be different egos in the squads. You're always going to have fallouts along the way. But you should never come to the physical element.
But back in our day, Rob, and it's funny, innit? We had youngies and oldies on the car park, didn't we? Right.
Yeah.
So all the lads were so respectful, the young lads, right? And they looked up to us who were doing reasonably well, if you know what I'm saying. But come Friday, when it was youngies v oldies, they wanted to beat us like you never believe. And that was their way of getting at us, because if we said anything to them, they listened to you. You weren't going around throwing your weight about, don't get me wrong, but there was a respect there, wasn't there? People now seem to be on a level where they think they're all on the same level and they all deserve and have got the right for everything that goes on. And I just, they're pampered too much. There's just too much, lovely meals before they even start training, after training. They just looked after too well, and everything's done for them. Like it wasn't for us to a degree. We used to fight for the training kit, like, didn't we? but things were on a plate for us in many ways. Like you said, Robbie, the money side of it takes away that burning ambition to be better and better and better. And when you look at that, like Bernardo Silva playing at City the other day, and you say,
Amazing.
well, there's a fellow who's played for 9 years in the Premier League, right? For a top team, winning everything, and you look at his performance, and that performance needs to be shown to all kids who play and earn too much money, and say, listen, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
The attitude he showed, not about his ability. His attitude was just immense, wasn't it?
But also, Mutchy, I listened to his interview afterwards as well, which was even, I think it might have been the first time I heard him speak, actually. Because you hardly ever saw him on talking, and I listened to his interview, right, and he came across as such a professional, right? The money wasn't the issue. You could just tell the money wasn't the issue. It was about going out of Burnley on next Wednesday night and winning the next game, and being focused on what they're going to achieve at the end of the season. This is his last season, so he wants to win for Man City to leave him on a good note and all that sort of stuff. And his interview, I thought, was absolutely amazing. For a young lad to be watching that and just saying, they should be saying, listen, that's the attitude I want to have. but also, yeah, they mightn't have the ability that he has, but also, that's the effort and discipline that I'm going to have in my career. Just looking at him talking and listening to him talking I thought was fantastic to hear.
I think that hits the nail on the head in a way, Denno, because what this whole episode has done, it's left Wolves. Well, it's shown that sort of the problems that do exist. Wolves now have a player in Tolu who cost huge sums in the summer that they're stuck with. They're trying to move on, but it's a decreasing asset in terms of his sell-on value because the attitude problems are now coming into the open. So the fact that this is now in the open has probably taken a bit of value off his price tag, and Wolves are stuck unless it doesn't. From what I've heard, there's no real way back for him. It's just he's not settled here, and it's not something that Wolves see a future with him. And you could tell that by the way that the way that the news broke and the Wolves spin on it was that they were making it very clear that it was Tolu's fault rather than Mane's.
It's just a matter of time, John, isn't it? Really, 4 or 5 weeks, and then.
Well, it's such a shame because it perhaps does illustrate where this wider mess that Rob Edwards has to deal with. It's all very well saying, "Oh, we'll give him a go in the Championship or we'll sell him," but it's going to be harder to sell players than we think, and I imagine it's going to be harder to give players a go in the Championship than we think. We'll do this in another podcast because I think it'll be a very useful exercise if we do a bit of prep work on this and have a chat about the current squad and in or out for next season because. Wolves clearly want to put their eggs in Matheus Mane's basket and make sure he's on the right side of history. And they seem to have be cutting ties with Tolu, which is a shame. And it's a shame it's ending like this.
I think it's a shame just looking at the players only because in the Championship, you look at how the Championship's played. And as I said before, he's always been a goal threat. Whenever he has played, he hasn't had the minutes, but he's always looked as if he's got a bit of a goal in him whenever he has come onto the pitch. Now, in the Championship, if you're giving him supply, the way he should be getting, if you're going to play with decent wide men and getting balls into the box and stuff, I think he will score you a decent amount of goals. But the reality of it is, if he doesn't want to be there, and if players don't want to be there, come the start of the next season, then you have to ship them out because if you're thinking about him as being a bit of a bad apple in the whole thing, then you have to get rid of those and just move on with the squad that wants to be there, wants to put the effort in for the club, fans, and also the manager himself. So if that's the case with him, that he's not going to produce and not going to do what toe the line the way he maybe should do, then obviously you have to look at them shipping him out. And if you do lose 5-10 million on him or whatever, then you have to get rid of these boys really because they're no asset to you really if they haven't got their head at the club. Like.
Wolves are happy for him to go because he's a bad egg. But if he was the top player, if he was the best player, they'd make an excuse for him.
Of course, yeah.
And he'd still be at the club. So that's how it rolls. So it probably tells you where he is as a player at the club. It's like anything. If you're not producing what ability you've got and more as regular as you should do, there's no point. It's like Jimmy White being the most skillful snooker player you've ever seen, maybe, or alongside Higgins. Never won the World Championship ever. So as good as he was, he couldn't use his skills at the top level at the right time to win what he should have won. Because is that application? Is that I don't know what it is. Is anyone going to lose any sleep of 90% of the players at the club leaving? Any Wolves fans? They're not, are they?
No,
I don't think. I don't think so, Johnny. Sorry, it's a case of having a good squad to start the next season and moving on.
One last thing, quickly. You got to mention Franny Lee and Norman Untreth were talking about footy players falling out.
Proper fight.
I like that, Mutchy. Fair play. It's a good way to end it. Franny Lee and Norman Hunter, and a very topical World Snooker Championships reference there as well. Poor old Jimmy White lost in 6 finals, and he's been rinsed by Andy Mutch. But
sorry, Jimmy.
There you go.
That's just finished them off, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to speak to you again after a couple of weeks holiday. So we'll be back again next week. But thanks for your time, and that was a great chat. Really enjoyed that.
No, thanks for that, Johnny.
Cheers,
Top
man.
man. Good man.
Well done.
Take care, fellas.